I'm Tess,
And I'm Sarah.
and this is the Basically Bookish podcast.
Today, we are covering chapters 7 through 12 of We Used to Live Here by Marcus Kliewer. If you haven't seen our first episode, deep diving this novel, we'll link it in our show notes.
The format for these episodes is a little bit different than our previous episodes. In a nutshell, we're just reading a section of chapters to discuss together, but we won't read ahead so that we can speculate about what might happen next in the story. We'd love if you would join us and read along too. Think of it as a digital book club.
Before we get started, don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow us on social media. We're at Basically Bookish on all platforms.
So, chapter 7, I didn't write down the chapter names for this one actually,
It's called Wait.
but chapter 7 is a short one. It's called Wake.
Mm-hmm.
Perfect. So it's a short one. We're in a dream, but we aren't sure whose dream. We also aren't fully sure if it's a dream or a flashback of a different time or a memory, perhaps. Maybe one of Allison, aka Thomas's sister's memories, was the vibe that I was getting. Anyway, it's of a girl that's running. She needs to find somewhere to hide. Off in the distance, people are chasing her, yelling things that she can't quite understand. She's running through the woods, getting hit with branches and thorns, when she comes to the edge of a cliff. Hundreds of feet below lays shallow water and jagged rocks. With nowhere else to go and her pursuers catching up, she jumps. In her head, a phrase begins to repeat itself in a sing-song voice. Once they're in, they never leave. Everything goes black, but the phrase remains. In the distance, a pale blue light forms. Once they're in, they never leave, Sarah.
Yeah. And actually the name of that chapter was Run, and that's what I'm doing. Run.
Yes. But it's chapter 8. Eve wakes up from a bad dream that she can't quite remember, so that explains that last chapter, kind of. Charlie and their dog, Shiloh, are still asleep, but Eve gets up to get a glass of water. As she's passing by the study, oh, I hate this chapter. Okay. As she's passing by the study, Eve glances inside to see the family still sleeping on assorted mattresses and pillows. Eve's drinking water out of a dirty wine glass in the kitchen when she notices that the door to the basement is slightly ajar. Wasn't it closed? Is someone down there? Did Jenny go to look for her lost pen, maybe? All bad answers.
Yeah.
Eve marches over and opens the door. Jenny? She calls. No answer. She remembers the little knock that Thomas used and she tries it. First, there's no answer, but when she turns to leave, she hears it. Jenny? She calls again, peering into the darkness. No response. She's about to leave when suddenly she sees a small, child-sized silhouette that is standing completely still and looking at her. Hey, let's go upstairs now, Eve asks. No response. Maybe if you come up, your dad will tell you more secrets about the house. The figure cocks its head to the side, but doesn't move further. The two are staring at each other, and Eve gets the feeling that something's off. She realizes that Jenny isn't blinking, and at the same time that she has that realization, the figure stands to its full height. It's over 6 foot tall, gaunt, thin. Slenderman has entered the chat, and I am so unhappy about it.
I was thinking Slenderman. I was trying to think of what his name was.
Ugh, could you imagine?
Yeah, no, actually. I try not to.
Eve slams the door shut and she runs back upstairs, again noticing that the entire family is asleep in the study, so it's not Thomas up to his weirdo antics. Eve wakes up Charlie and she tells her that there's someone in their basement, and Charlie isn't fully convinced and still a little drunk from the night before. It's 3 a.m. and she promises to investigate in the morning before she falls back asleep. Eve locks the door and waits up, vigilant, staring at the door, waiting. But eventually, she falls asleep as well. The chapter ends with 2 excerpts from a local paper and a transcript from a radio station. Each one of them talks about a suspicious fire that happened, so 2 separate fires actually. One at the Kent County Memorial Hospital and one at the Yale City Town Hall.
The name of this chapter, so the actual name of this chapter is Wake, and it begins with Eve yet again waking up. Charlie is gone, Shiloh is there, and Eve is being tormented by Mo again, telling her that the figure that she saw last night was the devil. So she goes downstairs and Charlie isn't there, but Thomas is cooking eggs and Paige is reading from the Bible to Jenny. Eve is questioning what she's seeing down there in the kitchen, and Thomas tells Eve that Charlie left a message, that she had to go to an urgent meeting and that the basement is all clear. But Eve can't get over how Charlie would just leave without telling her, especially leaving a family her there with her alone. And she just doesn't trust this family in general. And so she's really unable to hear what Thomas is saying to her, questioning everything.
I like that she's finally gotten to her line in this moment and she's like, "What are you doing in my kitchen? Why are you making food?" It's like to
Right.
have strangers that you don't really want in your house and then you wake up and they're just like opening shit, cooking, frying up
Yeah.
bacon, acting like it's their home. She's like,
Yeah.
"I'm so done with this, finally."
Yeah, my hairs would be prickling on my back. I'd be very unhappy with that.
I feel like
So
both
right
of
at
us can
that
relate
time,
to the fear of unwanted house guests that just will not
yeah,
leave.
that's right. 100%. Yeah, especially when they ring the doorbell unannounced. So right at that time, Newton comes in and says Kai is opening a box, a moving box. And there's this little double take that might be nothing, but for some reason it was bizarre enough that it caught my attention. Newton says to his mother, Paige, he says, I told Kai we don't touch things uh that don't belong to us. And there's something about that little stutter step. I just thought it was so fascinating. I could picture Newton walking in and saying to his mom, Kai's opened this box, and I told Kai that we don't touch things that we don't, and then looking at Eve and then going, that don't belong to us. And I don't know what he was going to say, but I'm keeping an eye on those two young boys.
I have completely omitted them from my script thus far.
Okay, that's fine. Eve wants to call Charlie, but she can't find her phone. And strangely enough, the entire family doesn't have one. And it's apparently a congregation ordained digital fast, which means that their church has told them all to turn in their cell phones and then he's going to mail them to them at the end of the month. And they're just going to go around the world as full adults with no cell phone. That is a bit strange. And during a
During a
cross
move,
country move. Yeah. So,
pull out the map, kid, or maybe they like
right.
printed up MapQuest.
How do you get gas for real? She verifies Charlie's jacket and boots are missing, so Thomas could be telling the truth from the closet. She lays back down, trying to relax, and almost does, but then right before closing her eyes, she sees Charlie's locket that she got yesterday is hanging from a crooked nail. It's actually one of the crooked nails that Charlie had removed the night before from the wall, and it's just suddenly
That Eve
back.
removed.
Yes, that Eve removed the night before, and it's just suddenly back. And what's really creepy about that is how do you get a crooked nail back in a hole, you know? So she decides to go to the neighbors and to ask for a phone. And she leaves the family in her house, who claim as she's walking out the door, she's kind of fed up with the situation at this point, and they claim as she's walking out the door that they will see themselves out when they are done with breakfast. The chapter comes to a close, but it's got one of those documents at the end. It's a printout of a question posted on a toy forum asking about the toy monkey that Tess referenced in our first episode, which is a monkey that resembles the character name that Eve has given to her personified paranoia. And his name is Mo, and he's the classic monkey like from Toy Story, but has white fur instead of black, like a knockoff version. And in this document, someone has posted a question on the toy forum asking about this monkey. Someone replies to the thread saying the name of the monkey and that another user claims to remember the monkey as well. Then yet another user replies saying that it's the Mandela effect and gives the definition and examples of the Mandela effect. So what they are arguing about there is the color of the monkey's fur, and they're trying to remember all the different details about it. Some people are saying that the monkey never existed. Some people are saying that it has because the toy maker says, here's the name of the monkey, so it must have existed. And so there's this back and forth. And then it ends with the Mandela effect description and examples of how that many people believe that they remember hearing that Nelson Mandela died in prison, but we live in the universe where Nelson Mandela was released from prison. And that's just a really random chapter, to be honest.
So random, but also I got really excited because in that text thread, one of the usernames was Navidson, and it took me back again to House of Leaves because there's this whole kind of thing called the Navidson record. I read this
Mm.
in high school, so it's been over 15, 20 years, which is embarrassing to say, but it's been a long time. But there's the Novitzin record in there. I think Novitzin was like one of the people like in this like spooky house. I forget exactly, but the name just rung a bell. And so I actually did a quick Google search, and it turns out that Novitzin is not an actual like surname that people use. It was like that name goes back to this book. So I know that this author has to have read this book and been somewhat inspired by it, which I totally get. It's one of the creepiest books I've ever read. And one day I'm definitely going to make you read it. But just that little
Yeah.
Easter egg, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm eating it up.
How cool. I love when authors do that, when they use like real life examples and like thread it into their book as well. I really enjoy that. That's so cool. All right. So the next chapter is called Stray, and Shiloh and Eve are outside. It's on Heritage Lane, they notice is the name of one of the roads, and it's a truly remote place. Eve is sort of playing back this conversation that she had with the realtor when they first bought the place. And Eve's mind is just like replaying the memory back to her. It kind of takes you out of the moment in the book. And it fades off, and you just hear the realtor talk about Stray Dog Summit. And Eve questions him, "What is Stray Dog Summit?" And he goes, "Oh, that's just the name of the place because there's so many stray dogs around here." And then during that time, Shiloh is running ahead. And Eve, while she's replaying this memory, Shiloh's running in front of her, and she comes around the corner and she sees that Shiloh is getting petted on the head by one of the neighbors, a woman. And she goes up and says hi to them, and the name of the neighbor is Heather.
It's really weird to see Shiloh being pet by this woman because Shiloh doesn't like anybody. She had a very
That's right.
traumatic upbringing, and pretty much this dog only trusts Eve and Charlie. So to see her so willingly go up to a stranger, it's very alarming. Eve is approaching the house, and she has this moment where she's like, "Oh, I forget exactly the numbers, but it's like 3707." And she's like, "Oh, I thought it was 3708." And again, we're kind of like, oh, "Okay, something's up." But she's approaching the house. She gets to the house, she rings the doorbell. No one answers. She rings the doorbell again, and then a light clicks off inside. And then she turns around, and Heather's there.
That's right. She does see the house before she sees Heather. That's right. And yes, like Tess said, Shiloh is very bad with other people. And so Eve has sort of got that question in her mind. And Heather says, "Oh, well, she's great with strays," referring to herself, saying, Heather is saying, "Oh, I'm great with strays." And that's when Eve mentions to Heather, "Oh, well, that makes sense. This is Stray Dog Summit." And Heather says, "What?" And Eve says, "Stray Dog Summit." And Heather says that she's never heard of this, of anyone calling the place Stray Dog Summit. The chapter ends with another document. It's a document about the side effects of hypothermia. It's a 1987 case study about a couple and about how hypothermia can cause this thing called terminal burrowing behavior, which seems to be that when modern day humans are faced with imminent death under very harsh circumstances like freezing or lack of water, that they will do this thing called terminal burrowing behavior, where they will burrow down into something in the snow or down under some dirt or under some rocks or something like that, just to protect themselves. And so that's how the chapter creepily ends. Gross.
And I hadn't put this together before, but now talking to you, in our last episode, we were talking about how the basement underneath the house is larger than the space of the house itself. And you talked about how they were tunneling down there. I wonder if that is somehow related, this like fear, this like compulsion to like tunnel. I don't know.
Yeah. Like
I hate it.
something about like a
I love it and I
remote
hate it.
house. Yeah, something about a remote house on a hill that has a larger footprint underneath it, like a larger footprint underneath it. It's just the creepiest thing to me. That's not okay. Don't do that to your house.
No, don't do that. No, we don't need mole
No.
people.
We don't even have basements in California, so no thank you.
Yeah, right. Okay, so we're on to chapter 11. Oh, 3707. I was right. Perfect.
And you perfectly mentioned it just now. I hadn't realized we don't actually know the address. Is it 3708 or 3707 or 3709? So that's interesting. All of those have
Right.
been mentioned.
Yeah, so chapter 11. as 3707 Heritage. Eve, Heather, and Shiloh are inside of Heather's house, and she's apologizing for the mess. Eve looks around, and things seem pretty much spotless, except for a pile of kids' toys on the floor. Heather explains that her grandkids were just visiting. Heather offers Eve something to drink, and Eve gets the feeling that Heather is a bit of a lonely old woman. And under different circumstances, Eve would probably sit and talk to her for a while just to kind of spend some time with her. But because she's focused on getting to the phone to call Charlie, she declines the offer. Shiloh's back to her old cautious self. She's lingering by the door. And Heather tells Eve that the phone is just down the hallway and around the corner on the end table.
So
I know,
creepy.
just like every spooky thing that it could be. Oh, it's just down this hallway out of sight. Yeah.
Yeah, no problem.
The hallway is described as looking like something out of a hotel with bluish/green walls and symmetrical doors that are closed on either side. Eve is looking down the hallway when she remembers that light that she saw turn off from inside of the house when she first rang the doorbell. Eve asks if Heather lives with anybody else, and when Heather says she doesn't, Eve lets her know about the light. And Heather says that some of the lights are on sensors, and so she's just like, well, it's not a big deal, and she slips out of view into the kitchen. Eve braves the hallway and walks over to the phone. As she's walking, she notices some photo collages on the walls. Weddings, lots of dogs, family trips, etc. She finally gets to the phone, which happens to be a rotary, and she calls Charlie. Charlie answers, and wherever she is, it seems really busy in the background. There's muffled voices of other people as well, and there's some sort of rhythmic beeping, and it's making Eve wonder if Charlie's like waiting in the checkout line of a store. Creepy. The whole thing, everything is just creepy.
Yeah, we don't know what Charlie does, so it's
Yeah,
like,
so
what urgent meeting would call you to the grocery store? Like, it's just very strange.
right. Very strange. Or like my before Eve said grocery store, I thought maybe hospital, but
Yeah,
I don't
could
know.
be.
But Charlie doesn't recognize the number, so Eve lets her know who it is and tells her that she lost her phone and is borrowing a neighbor. And Eve immediately gets the feeling that Charlie is judging her because she's probably thinking that she's overreacting. But in this conversation too, I was like, there's something really wrong here. Something really, really wrong here. Anyway, Eve tries to verify Thomas's story about Charlie going into town, but Charlie says that she can't really hear her and Eve's gonna need to speak up. When are you coming back? There was a long pause before Charlie says, when am I? Are you okay? And she sounds very impatient and even angry, which is confusing to Eve because if anyone should be upset, it's Eve. Why would Charlie just leave her alone in the house with this family of strangers and Slenderman running around in the basement and not even tell her? But I was kind of getting the feeling like Eve isn't aware of something that happened, some sort of dynamic shift between her and Charlie. Like maybe they've even broken up years ago, you know?
Right.
I don't know.
Interesting. Interesting. Oh, that's so interesting, Tess. Yeah, weird.
Right? Like to get a
It
call from an ex and
definitely,
you're like, what am I? What do you mean?
right. Interesting. It very much it seemed like there was some conversation that they had where like Eve should be expecting this and then is now like has changed her way of doing things and Charlie's like, what do you mean? Like that this isn't what we agreed on, essentially.
Yeah, it's so creepy.
Yeah. No, I didn't think
But so
about
Eve's
that.
like really confused about what's going on, right? I don't know. That's just the
Yeah.
vibe that I got. Like it very much felt like an ex like calling, intruding on your life, and then kind of being like, "When are you coming home?" And you're like, "What are you talking about?" You
What
know
do
what
you
I mean?
mean? Yeah. Where's home? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So Eve lets Charlie know that no, she's not really okay. She found Charlie's locket hanging above the fireplace. And as she's about to continue, she hears another voice on the other end of Charlie's phone. And Eve can't understand what they're saying, but it sounds really eerie, almost mechanical. So Charlie sighs and she says, Eve, just try to. But then the call gets cut out with a really loud and shrill beeping sound. Eve tries to call back, but the phone rings 3 times and drops again with the same beep sound. Just then, things get better. Eve hears shuffling behind her, and she turns around to see Heather facing away and hunched in a corner, which brings back the memory of Thomas from the basement, But don't worry, there's nothing weird to see here. Heather's just adjusting a crooked picture frame. And the picture is of a young Heather kissing the cheek of a bald man with gray eyes and a handlebar mustache. And they look very much in love. Eve is thanking Heather for everything. She's getting ready to go, putting on her boots. She has her hand on the doorknob to leave when Heather mentions that she overheard Eve mentioned someone named Thomas, and she's wondering if it's Thomas Faust. It turns out that Heather knew the Fausts when they lived at the house, and she's kind of letting out that she knows some of their sad story. Eve explains the situation with Jenny and the storm, etc., and Heather almost looks sad that Thomas wouldn't have chosen to just come and stay with her. Heather asks one more time if Eve wants some tea, and you know what? She sure as heck does, and so do we. Give us all of the tea, Heather. We are parched. The chapter ends with an
Yeah.
excerpt of a flyer from the Miyazaki film Spirited Away, with a description saying something about how, after taking a wrong turn, young Chihiro has to navigate the world of spirits and demons and try to save her family. So then we're on to chapter 12. Old friends. Let's talk about them. So Eve is waiting while Heather fixes the tea, and while she's waiting, her attention snags on another photo. It's of the handlebar mustache man, but this time he's younger, probably late 20s, long, luscious black hair, and he's the drummer in some sort of rock band. I wonder if that's the local rock band, the Ring of Eyes or whatever, but we'll
Brilliant.
see.
It probably is.
Heather comes back and lets Eve know that the man in the photograph is Michael, Heather's quote unquote better half. Heather lights up a cigarette and claims she just started smoking a couple months ago to see what all the fuss is about. She's an older lady. She doesn't have much time left. She wants to live. Okay, Heather, go
Hilarious.
off. At first, Heather's playing softball, saying that the house is really old, which isn't surprising to Eve because for whatever reason, the house itself has this kind of ancient feeling to it. Eve pushes a little bit further, saying that a lot of the records for the house were destroyed in a fire, which Heather tells her that fire never actually happened, and that the records were stolen. And nobody knows why, but the records for most of Yale and Kettle Creek Mountain were stolen. And she doesn't know where the fire story came from, but even Michael believed it. Very weird. Again, kind of
Yeah.
leading into that Mandela effect.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It seems like we're like a chapter, like the excerpt from the chapter before, something will happen that pertains to that excerpt in the next chapter. And so you're right. That's the Mandela effect.
Right. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Heather gets up to pour the tea. The kettle's ringing. And while she's gone, Eve hears a weird noise. It's like a thump and a scratching sound from somewhere down the hall. And she thinks that maybe she's just imagining things, but Shiloh is also alerted to it. Heather returns, and after some more gentle prodding from Eve, Heather lets her know that the Faust family only lived in the house for around 5 years, but quickly left after an incident. What incident, you ask? Well, it turns out that according to Heather, Allison, who Heather actually remembers as being named Alina, but Heather's just like, oh, I'm bad with names, kind of plays that off. But according to Heather, Allison wasn't Thomas's sister at all. She was a strange girl that showed up on the Faust property one day with no memory of where she came from. The Faust family filed the paperwork to have temporary guardianship of her and were considering adopting her, but Allison got the idea. Essentially, she kind of repeats that same thing where she started not being able to recognize the people in her life. She thought that she knew strangers really well, things that were changing in the house that only she could see. And at one point, Allison gets the idea that the only way to get her old life back was by stabbing Thomas repeatedly with a ballpoint pen while he was sleeping, 37 times in less than a minute. The only reason that Thomas survived was because his parents came into the room and stopped things. Very different story
37.
than what we've heard so
Yeah.
far.
Right. And 37 times in less than a minute does not sound like a young girl. Maybe. I don't know.
So,
That's a lot.
I don't know, a lot. But Heather gets up to go top off their tea, and something catches Eve's eye inside of the pile of toys on the floor. It's a jolly monkey, but its fur is white like Moe's, which is confusing for Eve because she's pretty sure his fur is supposed to be brown. So she sees not the knockoff version, not her version of Moe, she sees the standard jolly clapping chimp monkey, but his fur is the wrong color. We're transported to a memory of childhood Eve. It's the day she loses Mo. Her and her family are on a camping trip in Montana. She's buckled into the back seat with Mo buckled into the seat beside her. Her parents pull into a gas station, and Eve gets out of the car and stretches. When she turns around, Mo is gone. Seatbelt still fastened. He's been kidnapped. After a thorough search of the car, Eve's beloved monkey is still gone, an event that never sat right with her. Eve snaps back to the present moment, and she feels like she needs to leave. Now. She calls over Shiloh and starts lacing up her boots, saying something about the weather getting worse to Heather. Her hand is on the doorknob when the phone starts to ring. Heather lets Eve know that she doesn't usually get phone calls around here, so it's probably her partner calling her back. Because of course. Heather, are you in on this somehow?
Yeah, what?
But Eve moves to go to answer the phone, but there's a problem. Something about the hallway has changed. One of the doors is slightly open. Not enough to see inside, but enough to see out of. I know.
No, no, no. No, no, no. And like honestly, at
No.
this point, Heather is giving such mixed signals because like she walks up and Eve explains about the Stray Dog Summit, and Heather is like, I have a really good memory. I think I'd remember that. Like almost like telling her like, okay, newbie, I've been around, so I remember that. And then just a few
Right.
pages later, she's like, I'm not good at names. And it's like, you just remember Thomas Faust. You are good at names, you know?
Right. True. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no way.
Ugh. Ooh,
Mhm.
Heather, what is your deal? Eve points out the open door to Heather, and Heather says that she just thinks the hinge is broken. But we aren't taking any more chances today, and Eve decides to leave. The chapter ends with a very strange partial police report from a weird encounter near Kettle River. During a routine traffic patrol, an officer spotted a young Caucasian man, mid 20s, athletic build, wandering around in the center of the road. He's only wearing a t shirt and jeans, even though the weather is well below freezing. The officer tries to pick him up because he seemed disoriented, and he expressed a lot of concern about going to a psychiatric ward. Then, three unidentified Caucasian men, all approximately 6 feet tall and dressed in white suits, appear at the edge of the wood. They're just standing there, stationary. When the original guy sees them, it sends him into a panic, and he runs into the woods on the opposite side of the road. When the cop looks around some more, the other three men have also vanished, and the cop decides not to pursue, but dispatch is notified and a search party is sent out. And the chapter ends.
Terrifying. Just terrifying at this point. The tension in that hallway before Eve left, I was like, don't go down there. Don't go down there. Like, I don't know what's going on. I mean, there's no reason to suspect Heather of anything. She's been nothing but nice, just like Thomas. They've all been like nothing but polite except for the strange circumstances they're in. And so, yeah, it's deeply unsettling because you can't sit there and point to any one weird thing. It could have been a broken hinge. It could have been a light on a timer. Maybe she's just really good with
Or
strays
it
and
could
not
be
a.
Slenderman just waiting.
Yeah. And maybe she's like the devil incarnate, and of course she can make the dogs come to her?
Right. Oh, I'm really enjoying this book. I'm like hating it as I'm
Right.
but I'm really, really enjoying it. It is like bringing out so much emotion in me,
Yeah. Yeah, it's
mostly
interesting
fear.
the way, yeah, but the way that the author can leave so much left unsaid that is just like all that's happening is it's just banging around in your own head, but you just can't let it go? So creepy.
Yeah. All right. So we are like roughly halfway through this book. Do you
Yes.
have any theories? Do you want to touch again on any theories that you have, or what do you think is going on here? What do you think's happening?
You're calling back to the book House of Leaves, but I'm calling back to that movie Identity with John Cusack, where we like find out at the end that, well, don't let me spoil this 30-year-old movie for you, but you find out at the end that actually the person who was telling the story is this everyone who was in the movie was just a facet of the main character's personality, and they have multiple personality disorder. And so I think we've already laid the groundwork for Eve having some sort of mental break. I think that that's somewhere in here. Whether or not Heather and Thomas and Charlie are all figments of her imagination or just normal people, and she's having a psychotic or, having an episode where she's unable to know if something is reality or not is hard to say. Or maybe it is just Slender Man. Could be. And she's having a legitimate,
Right. I know.
response.
Right. Yeah, so I think you're spot on. I think that usually the most obvious answer is the correct one. And not every single person can be conspiring. How would Thomas have spoken to Charlie and known to mention that Charlie checked the basement? How would Heather, there's so many
Right,
moving parts.
right.
Like everybody can't be like in this whole world that is just the entire world is malevolent
Fabric.
towards you. I feel like it makes more sense that yeah. And I also do think that that is undoubtedly the scariest outcome because it is something that as humans, unfortunately, we do have to deal with. Even just things like dementia and Alzheimer's and things like that that people face as they age. It is terrifying. I am hopeful that we have some sort of weird magical
Me
realism
too.
thing,
Yeah,
or maybe it is the devil, or maybe it
yeah.
is aliens or skinwalkers, body snatchers,
Right.
like this ancient ritual that just has to repeat itself because of the way that the land is. Something like that would be really fascinating, but I do think
Yeah.
probably our little Eve needs some help.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that would be really fun. I think that like as of right now, my favorite ending for this book, if I could just, come up with a quick ending, would be to find out that all of those people were conspiring against her and that Eve was right all along. Everyone was like in on something and like even Charlie was like, I don't know, somehow a figment of her
Being
imagination or
manipulated
something like that.
somehow.
Yeah, or being manipulated.
Yeah,
That right there would give me the most creeps because it would upend everything that we think about how books like this work. And it couldn't be a mass conspiracy. And I think it would be really interesting if it ended up being like that. I can't wait to keep reading.
I know. I'm so excited to keep reading too. And let us know what you guys think if you're reading this along with us. We would love to hear from you. This book is so fun. It's definitely kind of a left turn from what we normally read, but I'm really glad that we are reading it.
Me too. Read with us.
Yeah, read with us. Come on. All right, that takes us to the end of this week's episode. We really hope that you enjoyed it so far. We hope that you're reading along with us. If you are enjoying these episodes, don't forget to rate, subscribe, and leave us a review. We'd love to hear from you.
Next week, we'll cover chapters 13 through 18, and we're just going to keep going headfirst into this. So we're very scared, but please come along with us.
We need you to hold our hands.
Yes, get under a blanket and cuddle up on the couch with your best friend and a book. Don't be alone for this one.
You can find us on all social media at Basically Bookish Pod. We would love to see you there. And until next time,
Happy reading.